Friday afternoon. Mecca, 1987. A column of tens of thousands of people is moving through a narrow street less than half a kilometer from the Grand Mosque. Women in black chadors are at the front, behind them men in wheelchairs, war amputees. Then the rest, thousands upon thousands, packed shoulder to shoulder, chanting in unison. The march has been peaceful for 30 minutes. Then the column stops. Ahead, a wall of riot police, shields, batons, National Guard. Nobody moves. For a few seconds, the chanting continues. Then, from a parking garage above, something falls. A brick. Then another. Then chunks of concrete and iron bars raining down onto the crowd from unidentified people who are never found, never named, never investigated. The front of the column surges into the police line. The police line holds. Truncheons swing, electric prods fire, and somewhere in the chaos that follows, someone gives an order, or no one gives an order. It does not matter. The bullets start, and in the next 90 seconds, the holiest city on earth becomes a killing field. 402 people will die on this street before the sun goes down. 275 of them are Iranian pilgrims who came to perform Hajj. 85 of them are Saudi police officers. 42 are pilgrims from other countries who had nothing to do with any of this. They were simply standing in the wrong street, in the wrong city, on the wrong Friday. No independent investigation was ever conducted. No neutral forensic team ever examined the bodies. No international observer was ever allowed in. Saudi Arabia calls this day a riot. Iran calls it a massacre. The truth has been locked inside a corridor of competing lies for nearly 40 years, and almost nobody outside the Middle East has ever heard of it. This is how it happened. To understand the 31st of July, you have to understand what was building behind it for 8 years. In February 1979, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile to Iran and led a revolution that overthrew the Shah, established an Islamic republic rooted in Shia theology, and declared a mission to export that revolution across the Muslim world. In November of that same year, 600 armed militants smuggled weapons inside coffins into the Grand Mosque in Mecca, pretending they were carrying bodies for funeral prayers. They seized the mosque, took 100,000 worshippers hostage, declared that one among them was the Mahdi. Saudi forces and French commandos spent 2 weeks clearing the building. Hundreds died. 63 militants were publicly beheaded. These two events, 9 months apart, permanently altered the security psychology of the Saudi state. After 1979, anything that looked like political mobilization inside Mecca was treated not as a nuisance, but as an existential threat. And political mobilization is precisely what Khomeini had been orchestrating inside Mecca since 1971. He instructed followers to distribute political pamphlets during the pilgrimage. After the revolution, this escalated sharply. By 1981, Iranian pilgrims were chanting slogans inside the Grand Mosque itself. Death to America, death to the Soviet Union, death to Israel. Saudi police clashed with them. One Iranian pilgrim was killed. In 1982, Khomeini sent Hojatul Islam Khomeini as his personal Hajj representative. This was the same man who had mentored the students who took the American embassy in Tehran hostage. Khomeini was arrested in Mecca, gave a defiant speech in Medina, and was expelled from the country. Then something unexpected. Both sides stepped back. From 1983 to 1986, a fragile understanding emerged. Khomeini urged restraint. Saudi authorities, in a calculated concession, permitted 2 annual Iranian demonstrations, one in Mecca and one in Medina, along pre-agreed routes, far from the mosques. Slogans restricted to America, Israel and the Soviet Union, no criticism of Muslim governments, no printed material, no posters of Khomeini. In 1986, the Saudis even reopened the historic Baqi cemetery in Medina for Shia visitation, and Khomeini's representative formally thanked King Fahd. For a brief window, coexistence seemed possible, but 1986 also delivered a detonation of a different kind. Saudi customs found C4 plastic explosives hidden inside the luggage of Iranian pilgrims arriving for Hajj. Over 100 pilgrims were detained. The plot appeared designed to destroy the very understanding both sides had built. Whether Iranian hardliners or rogue actors were responsible remains unclear. What is clear is that after 1986, every molecule of trust between Riyadh and Tehran evaporated. And when the next Hajj season arrived, Saudi security treated Iran not as a pilgrim delegation, but as a potential invading force. The geopolitical pressure in the summer of '87 made everything worse. The Iran-Iraq war was in its 7th year. 500,000 people were dead. Saddam Hussein's army was funded by Saudi Arabia and armed by the United States. American warships had just entered the Persian Gulf to escort Kuwaiti oil tankers. Iran saw Saudi Arabia not as the custodian of Mecca, but as an active belligerent financing the war that was bleeding Iran dry. In early July, 3 weeks before the demonstration, Khoeiniha, no longer the official Hajj representative but still powerful, gave a speech that was broadcast on Radio Tehran. He declared that a mere march would not suffice. He demanded that Saudi Arabia allow Iran's representative to enter the Grand Mosque, address all pilgrims, and conduct a referendum on the American naval presence in the Gulf. His exact words, recorded and broadcast: "All we ask is that the Saudi government not oppose this, nor send its guards to the Great Mosque." Let us see what happens. We will try it for 1 year. The Saudis heard this as a threat to storm the Grand Mosque. The memory of 1979, the coffins full of weapons, the 2-week siege was only 8 years old. A Saudi official responded publicly. Political demonstrations inside the Grand Mosque would constitute a religious innovation, he said. Anyone who attempts to innovate in Islam will go to hell. Iran's actual official representative that year was Mahdi Karroubi, a more moderate figure. He tried to assure the Saudis that the demonstration would follow the usual route and end half a kilometer before the mosque. An Iranian and a Saudi official walked the planned route together in advance. But the damage from Khoeiniha's speech could not be undone. On the eve of the march, Saudi officials pressured Karroubi to cancel the demonstration entirely. He refused. He issued a statement: "If this order occurs, the responsibility lies entirely with Saudi Arabia." 2 days before the march, Khomeini published his annual message to the pilgrims. It was longer than usual, more heated, but it included the same instruction he had issued every year: avoid clashes, insults, and disputes. Do not embark on spontaneous moves. Then Friday arrived. The city was unrecognizable. Armed soldiers replaced religious police at every gate of the Grand Mosque. For the first time anyone could remember, every pilgrim entering the mosque was subjected to a full body search. Sun umbrellas were confiscated. Water canteens were confiscated. The atmosphere was not the atmosphere of the holiest Friday of the year. It was the atmosphere of a city preparing for war. After the midday prayers, the march began. 150,000 Iranians moved through the streets. Same slogans as every year. Same formation. Women and war invalids at the front. The procession followed the agreed route. Speeches were delivered. For the first half hour, nothing unusual happened. Then the front of the column reached the end of the permitted route. A cordon of Saudi riot police and National Guard blocked the road. The march was instructed to stop. This was the agreed boundary. Every previous year, this was where the demonstration ended and the pilgrims turned back. This year, voices inside the crowd began calling for the march to continue, to push past the police, to go to the Grand Mosque. And from a parking garage overlooking the street, unidentified figures began throwing bricks, concrete, and iron bars into the crowd. The front of the march collided with the police line. Saudi officers swung truncheons and fired electric prods. Iranians, according to Saudi accounts, produced knives, clubs, and broken glass from under their garments. The rear of the column, unable to see what was happening ahead, continued pushing forward. Those at the front were caught between a police wall ahead and a human wall behind. People fell. People were trampled. And then, according to declassified American intelligence cited by the New York Times, National Guard reinforcements arrived, fired tear gas canisters into the crowd, and opened fire with pistols and automatic weapons. Saudi Arabia denied this. Prince Bandar bin Sultan, the Saudi ambassador in Washington, held a press conference and stated, "Not one bullet was fired." Saudi officials maintained that every death was caused by the stampede. Iran told a completely different story. They said Saudi forces opened fire on unarmed pilgrims without provocation. Robin Wright, the American journalist, reported that many Iranian bodies flown back to Tehran and shown to Western reporters displayed clear bullet wounds. 402 dead, 649 wounded. Those are the Saudi numbers. Iran claimed 400 of its own pilgrims alone were killed and several thousand wounded. No reconciliation between these figures was ever attempted. No independent body was ever permitted to count. Within 48 hours, the violence multiplied. In Tehran, 1 million people converged in the streets in what the government officially declared a day of hate. Mobs stormed the Saudi embassy. 4 Saudi diplomats were abducted. One of them, Musad al-Ghamdi, fell from a window during the attack. Iran delayed his medical transfer. He died of his injuries on the 18th of August. Khomeini called on Saudis to overthrow the royal family. His designated successor, Ayatollah Montazeri, demanded the liberation of Mecca from the House of Saud. Iraq's government demanded that Iranians be permanently banned from performing Hajj. Saudi Arabia severed diplomatic relations with Iran on the 27th of April, 1988. Iran's pilgrim quota was slashed from 150,000 to 45,000. Iran responded by boycotting Hajj entirely for 3 consecutive years, 1988 through 1990. 20,000 Pakistani troops stationed in Saudi Arabia were sent home because the Saudis were no longer comfortable with Shia soldiers on their soil. In 1989, during the boycott, 2 pipe bombs exploded near the Grand Mosque. 1 pilgrim was killed, 16 were wounded. Saudi police arrested over 30 Kuwaiti Shia. 16 were publicly beheaded by sword in a square in Mecca. Diplomatic relations were restored in 1991. Iran's pilgrims returned, capped at 115,000. Demonstrations were permitted again, but only within the walls of the Iranian compound. No marching, no approach to the Grand Mosque. That arrangement has held with limited interruptions for over 3 decades. Martin Kramer, the scholar who spent years reconstructing this event from primary sources on both sides, wrote a single sentence that may be the most honest thing anyone has said about the 31st of July, 1987. No evidence has been produced by Saudi Arabia or Iran to establish that the other side acted deliberately or with premeditation in order to provoke violence. Nobody planned what happened, and nobody stopped it. And 402 people who came to Mecca believing they were walking on ground where no blood could be spilled, discovered in the last minutes of their lives that the oldest rule in the holiest city on earth only holds until someone decides it does not. There is no memorial on that street, no plaque, no marker. The pavement was cleaned, the blood was washed, the dead were buried, and the pilgrimage resumed the following year as if nothing had happened. Because in Mecca, the one thing more sacred than the truth is the appearance that everything is exactly as it has always been.